When I started the first internet company, Zip2, with my brother and another person, Greg Curry, it wasn't really with the thought of being wealthy. I've got nothing against being wealthy, but
we'll get back to that later too.
but it's just it was just from the standpoint of wanting to be part of the internet, and I figured if we could make enough money to just get by, that would be okay. And when we started off, we literally only had like one computer, and so it would be our web server during the day, and I'd code at night. And we just got a small office in Palo Alto back when rent was not insane, and it cost us like $450 a month. It was cheaper than an apartment, so we actually just slept in the office and then showered at the YMCA at Page Mill, El Camino. So we'd walk over there and shower, and that was actually, I think that was when I first met you, by the way. So I don't know how many people, probably not many people know this, but we actually pitched Steve in like January '96 on the Zip2 business plan, and actually I thought Steve was actually one of the most up to speed on what actually was in our business plan. Most of the people we met did not actually read our business plan. In fact, a lot of venture capitalists we met at the time didn't even know what the internet was. They'd never used it.
Sure,
and they didn't think
I'm not
it would
sure
amount
if we
to
still
anything.
do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm talking like sort of well-known people in Sand Hill. It was like, wow, okay. But at the time, nobody had made any money on the internet. So I guess that's it wasn't really clear evidence that there was a business. I mean, I should say that, when I was a kid, I didn't really have any grand designs. I mean, the reason I started programming computers is because I like computer games. And I play lots of computer games, and I learned that if I wrote software and sold it, then I could get more money and buy better computers. So it wasn't really, with some grand vision or anything. When I was growing up, I'd read lots of books, and they were very often set in the United States, and it seemed like a lot of new technology was being developed in the United States. So I thought, okay, I really want to work on new technology, so I want to get to Silicon Valley. When I was growing up, Silicon Valley seemed like some sort of mythical place, like Mount Olympus or something. I came to the conclusion that my initial premise was wrong, that in fact there's a great deal of will. There's not such a shortage, but people don't think there's a way, and that if people thought there was a way, or at least something that wouldn't break the federal budget, then people would support it, which in retrospect I think is actually kind of obvious, because the United States is a distillation of the human spirit of exploration. Mm-hmm. People came here from other places. I mean, it's there's no nation that's more a nation of explorers than the United States, but people need to believe that it's possible, and that it's not, they don't have to give up like healthcare or something important.
Right.
It's got to be that's important. So I thought, okay, well, then it's not a question of will. It's a question of showing that there's a way.
In the beginning, nobody wanted a Tesla. I can tell you that. When we made the original sort of roadster sports car, people were like, well, why would I want an electric car? My gasoline car works fine. I'm like, no, electric car is better. I should try it. And it was hard to get people to do a test drive. First of all, nobody knew who we were. They never heard of this company. And I'm like, yeah, we're named after Nikola Tesla. You know that guy? Nope. So for sure we were doing push in the beginning, because people said there was no one telling us that they wanted an electric car. So it was not out of like, it was like lots of people coming up to me saying, hey, I really want an electric car. I heard that 0 times. So people were like, it's like, man, we're going to make an electric car and show that these things can be good, and then people will want them. It's like, I think it was like Henry Ford said, like when we talk about the Model T, it's like if you asked the public what they wanted, they'd say a faster horse. Mm-hmm. So if you did like a big survey and said, well, hey, public, before automobiles, what would you like? It's like, well, I'd like my horse to go 3 miles an hour faster and eat less food and, be stronger and live longer and that kind of thing. There'll be basically a bunch of incremental improvements on horse. Because people, when you say like, well, what about an automobile, that car that drives itself? Like, what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. But when you actually make an automobile and give it to people and say, okay, now this is a horse where you can keep it in the barn, and if you leave for a month, it's still alive. Yeah. So carry more weight than a horse and go further and that kind of thing. So, it's like when it's a radically new product, people don't know that they want it because it's just not in their scope. I think when they first started making TVs, they did a nationwide survey. I think this might have been like 46 or 48. It was like a famous nationwide survey. Will you ever buy a TV? Now, it was like 96% of respondents said no. Some crazy number. Like basically everyone's like, would you buy a TV? And maybe they put a price in there or something, I don't know. But it was famously, almost everyone said they would not buy a TV, but they didn't know what they're talking about.
So the big game-changing stuff at the beginning is a company push kind of a thing most of the time, but then changes to the product over time can be a lot more customer pull kind of a focus.
Yeah, changes to the product over time can be incremental changes. Then customers can certainly tell you, it's good to get customer feedback to say, how can we improve the product? And once they're using it, they can say, okay, I like this thing about it, I don't like this other thing, and then we can improve the product over time. Customer feedback after they have the fundamental thing is great. When trying different things, you got to have some acceptance of failure, as you were alluding to earlier. Failure must be an option. If failure is not an option, it's going to result in extremely conservative choices, and you may get something even worse than lack of innovation. Things may go backwards. If what you really want is you want reward and punishment to be proportionate to the actions that you seek. So if what you're seeking is innovation, then you should reward success in innovation, and only there should be minor consequences for trying and failing. There should be minor. With significant rewards for trying and succeeding, minor consequences for trying and not succeeding, and major negative consequences for not trying.
Or maybe I just blank out the word doubt. No, I mean, to be totally frank, I doubted us too. So I thought we, had maybe, when starting SpaceX, maybe had a 10% chance of reaching orbit. So to those who doubted us, I was like, well, I think you're probably right. The number of times that I was told, like, because I was taking the money that I earned from PayPal and rolling it into to create SpaceX and Tesla, and I ended up spending it all. It wasn't the intention, but almost both companies went bankrupt. Frankly, 2008 was a tough year. It took us 4 attempts just to get to orbit with Falcon 1. But a lot of times people would tell me this joke, like, how do you make a small fortune in the rocket industry? You start with a large one, is the punchline. And I was like, okay, I already heard that joke 12,000 times, Anyway, and it almost came true. We just barely made it there, that 4th launch of Falcon 1. That's all the money we had for that 4th launch. And then, and that wasn't even enough to save the company. We also then had to win the NASA cargo resupply contract. So that came a little after, a little bit later, or right towards the end of 2008. Those are the two key things that saved SpaceX. Otherwise, we would have, not made it. So hey, I think those doubters were, their probability assessment was correct. But fortunately, fate has smiled upon us and brought us to this day.
As you look back on your career in the space industry, what has been the most surprising or unexpected challenge that you faced? And along those lines, if you were to go back in time and talk to your 20-year-old self, would you do anything differently?
Go back in time to your 20-year-old self.
I mean, I think it would make far fewer mistakes. Obviously, if I could go, like, here's a list of all the dumb things you're about to do. Please do not do them.
Wouldn't we all?
It'd be a very long list, and like, here, let me write it down or something. I mean, it's hindsight's 20/20, so it's hard to say. I mean, I've made so many foolish mistakes. I have lost count, honestly. I mean, some of these things I just wish like that's a simple sort of mantra, management by rhyming. I mean, it worked for Homer, okay? The management by rhyming is that thing I was saying, like, if the schedule is long, the design is wrong. We've overcomplicated the design many times. And I think we should have just gone with a simpler design, with the acid test being, how long will it take for this to fly? And if it's going to take a long time, don't do it. Do something else. I think one thing that's important is if you have a choice of a lower valuation with someone you really like, or a higher valuation with someone you have a question mark about, take the lower valuation. It's better to have a higher quality venture capitalist who you think would be great to work with than to get a higher valuation with someone where there's even a question mark, really. I think that's important. It's sort of like getting married. I mean, the way I tend to view problems is from a physics standpoint. I think physics is a good analytical framework. And one of the key things in physics is to reason from first principles. This is contrary to the way most human reasoning takes place, which is by analogy. Reasoning from first principles just means that you figure out what are the fundamental truths or things that people are pretty sure are fundamental truths, and can you build up to a conclusion from that, from those principles, and then certainly if you come up with some idea and it appears to violate one of those fundamental truths, then you're probably wrong, or you should get a really big prize or something like that. So this may seem like, I don't know, it may seem sort of obvious when it's explained, but it's actually not what people do. Reasoning by analogies is helpful because it's a shortcut.
Yeah.
And it's mostly correct, but it tends to be most incorrect when you're dealing with new things, because it's hard to analogize to something really new. Tesla really faced a severe threat of death due to the Model 3 production RAM. Essentially, the company was bleeding money like crazy, and just if we didn't solve these problems in a very short period of time, we would die, and it was extremely difficult to solve them.
How close to death did you come?
Within single-digit weeks.
22 hours a day, or like what? How many hours?
Just working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop.
You ever worry about yourself imploding? Like it's just too much?
Absolutely. No one should put this many hours into work. This is not good. And people should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart.